So how do we bring family conversation back to the dinner table, just like they used to be? What kind of content is really shaping our kids' minds in the digital age? We spoke to family therapist Tom Kirsten on what the digital age is doing to our brains and how it's changing us both socially and physically. What are some of the biggest issues that are facing families and teenagers that you've encountered during your practice?
Yeah, so for the last 17 years, I've been lecturing about screen time. I've written books on it. I wrote a book called Disconnected. So the devices, the tablets, all of these things have sort of woven their way into the family system. So if you look at the encyclopedia and you look at the definition of family, it sort of resembles the Brady Bunch. But the typical family nowadays resembles more like four individuals that are living under the same roof in a different room. And the problem, here's the issue with that, Steve. So the greatest predictor of a child's mental health outcomes is the relationship that they have with their parents. And if mom's in the bedroom, dad's watching TV, Johnny's in the basement, and Susie's up in her bedroom, that's not really definitive of what a relationship is. So we got to get our kids around that dinner table. We got to get conversation flowing, the way it used to be. And we have to mitigate this screen time that's just injected itself into our lives and our families.
What do you say to somebody who might say, no, the phones, they've been around forever and, you're not going to take it out of my hand. What are some of the real world effects that, the data has said about screen time?
Yeah, so really smartphones. So smartphones became mainstream in 2012. And if you look at the data, if you look at mental health data, let's say from 2000 to 2012 among teenagers. So anxiety, depression, and suicide, it's pretty level, starts going up a little bit, around 2008. After 2012, it's like Mount Everest, and it hasn't stopped. So all the data points to the fact that the immersion of this screen time is what's triggering this massive mental health epidemic. And that goes, it's the social skills of the kids. They're spending 8 hours or more per day, more than any other life activity. And it's the content that is being driven into their malleable minds that's shaping their thoughts. And an emotion is a symptom of thought. And it's also the fact that today's kids, if you're spending 8 or 9 hours a day in a screen, you're not out socializing, right? It's a distraction academically, so they're not developing social skills. And most important of all, it's actually a distraction from self. You can't get to know the depth of what self is. And the depths of self within are confidence, spirituality, joy, abundance, and gratitude.
It's amazing, Tom. Sadly, we've seen some of these high-profile shooters that have, committed, horrendous acts of crime. All roads sort of trace back to them being heavily involved in video games or different, platforms that are directly attached to that screen. We're also seeing cases where young adults have committed suicide being prompted by AI chatbots. What can be done about this? And if we don't do something, is this going to become even more prominent?
Yeah, this is literally probably the biggest epidemic I've seen in my lifetime, all the things that you just mentioned. Now, I'm not a huge advocate of the government stepping in and taking things over, but other countries have banned phones and social media for kids, I believe, till the age of 15 or 16. So the truth is, most parents are aware of this. They know it's a problem, but it's turned into a sort of social conformity where if your child is the only one that's 11 or 12 years old that doesn't have a phone, parents know, they roll the dice and they just do it because they don't want their kid to be left out. So maybe we do need some larger oversight. One thing that I'm starting to see now, and I've been advocating and preaching about this for many years, is that schools across the country are now banning phones from either being in the school or being used at all in the school. And what we're seeing already, Steve, is just massive improvements. We're seeing the cafeteria is now lit up with kids communicating and talking instead of staring at devices. Teachers have told me that they have students in their class that have never raised their hand or spoken, but now raising their hand, their smiles on their face, and test scores have improved. And another thing that's improved in schools is that disciplinary infractions have gone down in schools where they removed the smartphone, and so have mental health situations where a kid has panic attacks or a mental moment. Those have decreased as well.